The Great Hall of the Dominion Council was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its walls stretched upward for nearly a mile, covered in the flags and symbols of 100 conquered civilizations. Floating platforms carried delegates from dozens of alien races, all of them watching the center stage with expressions of fear and anticipation. At the heart of this massive chamber, High Commander Vexthar of the Zorath Empire rose from his throne. He was an impressive creature, standing nearly 9 feet tall, with 4 gleaming eyes and a body covered in natural armor that had evolved over millions of years. His species had conquered 17 civilizations in the past 3,000 years. They had never known defeat. "Let it be recorded," Vexthar announced, his voice amplified to fill every corner of the hall, "that on this day, the Zorath Empire formally declares war upon the species known as humanity." A holographic display flickered to life above him, showing thousands of warships in perfect formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction, capable of reducing entire continents to glass. The assembled delegates murmured in a mixture of relief and pity. Relief that they were not the target this time, pity for the foolish humans who had somehow angered the most powerful empire in existence. At the far end of the hall, in a small booth reserved for minor species, sat humanity's delegation. It consisted of only 2 people. Ambassador Daniel Porter was a man in his early 50s, with gray hair and a calm face that seemed permanently settled into an expression of mild amusement. His assistant, Claire Webb, was younger, perhaps 30, with sharp eyes that noticed everything. Daniel was reading a newspaper, an actual paper newspaper printed on real wood pulp, which he had brought from Earth specifically for this occasion. He did not look up when the declaration was made. He simply turned the page and continued reading. Claire leaned close to him. "Sir, they just declared war on us." "I heard," Daniel said pleasantly. He squinted at something on the page. "Do you know a 7-letter word for an ancient weapon that is still effective?" "Sir, this is serious. They are going to attack Earth." "Musket? No, that is only 6 letters. Daniel frowned at the crossword puzzle. High Commander Vexthar had noticed the human ambassador's strange behavior. His 4 eyes narrowed with anger. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever responded to a declaration of total war with such complete disregard. Some begged. A few had tried to run, though there was nowhere to run to. None had ever ignored him. "Human," Vexthar's voice thundered across the chamber, "do you understand what has been spoken? Your species has been given 90 rotations to surrender completely. If you refuse, every human world will be burned. Every human city will be destroyed. Every man, woman, and child of your kind will be erased from existence. This is not a threat. This is a certainty." Daniel finally looked up from his newspaper. He folded it carefully, taking his time, making sure the creases were perfect. Then he smiled at the High Commander with the patient expression of a teacher addressing a confused student. "I heard you quite clearly, Commander. Very impressive speech. The holographic warships were a nice touch, very dramatic." He stood up slowly, straightening his plain gray suit. "However, I believe there has been a misunderstanding about humanity's position in this galaxy." Vexthar's mandibles clicked with contempt. "There is no misunderstanding. You are prey. We are predators. This is the natural order of all things." Daniel tucked the newspaper under his arm and stepped out of the booth onto the main floor. Every eye in the chamber turned to watch him. "Tell me, Commander, do you know why humanity has not expanded beyond our 12 star systems in the 200 years since we discovered faster-than-light travel?" "Because you are weak," Vexthar said immediately. "Because you are timid. Because you are unworthy of the stars. Your species stays in its little corner of space, like frightened children hiding from the dark." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That is what everyone believes, yes. That is what we wanted everyone to believe. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. But it is not the truth. Something in his tone made Vexthar hesitate. There was no fear in this human's voice, no desperation. If anything, there was something almost like anticipation. The truth, Daniel continued, is that humanity has been waiting, watching, learning. We have studied every species in this galaxy. We have analyzed every war, every conquest, every act of cruelty committed by empires like yours. And we have prepared. Prepared for what? Vexthar demanded. Daniel's smile did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. The warmth drained away, replaced by something cold and ancient and terrifying. For someone to give us a reason. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the background hum of the floating platforms seemed to fade away. You see, Commander, humanity learned a long time ago what we are capable of. On our own world, before we ever reached the stars, we fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of our own kind. We developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. We created poisons that could wipe out all life on a planet. Daniel's voice remained calm, almost conversational. And then we looked at what we had become, and we were horrified. He began walking toward the center stage, his footsteps echoing in the silence. So we made a choice. We decided to be better. We locked away our weapons. We turned our energy toward peace and exploration and building a society that valued life. We became the quiet, harmless humans that everyone in this galaxy thinks they know. He stopped at the base of Vexthar's platform and looked up at the towering alien commander. But we never forgot what we are capable of, and we never stopped preparing for the day when someone would force us to remember. Vexthar stared down at the small human, trying to process what he was hearing. You are bluffing. Your species has no military to speak of. Our intelligence reports show only a handful of defense vessels. Your intelligence reports show what we wanted them to show. Daniel checked his watch casually. In approximately 30 seconds, the Galactic News Network will begin broadcasting live footage from the Sol system. I suggest you watch carefully. As if on cue, the holographic display above the chamber flickered and changed. The image of the Zorath war fleet disappeared, replaced by a view of empty space near Earth's sun. Then the space was no longer empty. Ships began appearing. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of vessels materialized out of nowhere, their hulls black as the void between stars, their running lights glowing an angry red. They moved into formation with perfect precision, a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across the entire display. The murmuring in the chamber rose to a roar of shock and disbelief. Daniel watched Vexthar's face with quiet satisfaction. Please inform your Emperor that Operation Morningstar is now active. You have 90 days to consider your surrender. He turned and began walking back toward his booth. Claire, be a dear and arrange for some coffee. It is going to be a very interesting few months. 60 days had passed since the declaration of war. In the cold darkness of space beyond Mars, Admiral Patricia Cole stood on the command bridge of the USS Horizon and watched her fleet grow. Patricia was a tall woman in her late 40s, with silver-streaked black hair, and eyes that had seen things she would never speak about. She had served in the Earth Defense Force for 25 years, rising through ranks that most humans did not even know existed. Her uniform carried no medals, no ribbons, no symbols of achievement. Such things were meaningless in a military that operated entirely in secret. Admiral, said Lieutenant Kevin Morris from his station, the 7th Fleet has completed assembly. That brings our active strength to 42,000 vessels. Patricia nodded slowly. 42,000 ships, each one designed and built in complete secrecy over the past 2 centuries. Each one carrying weapons that the galaxy had never seen. "Show me the forge," she said quietly. The main display shifted to show a structure hidden deep within the asteroid belt. It was not one facility, but thousands, connected by transport tubes and energy conduits into a manufacturing complex larger than some moons. Automated factories worked around the clock, guided by artificial intelligences that never needed sleep or rest. Construction drones swarmed over half-completed ship hulls, welding and fitting and assembling within human speed. The forge was humanity's greatest secret. It had been built starting in 2091, just 2 years after humans first detected alien signals from deep space. Those early scientists had listened to the transmissions with growing horror as they learned the truth about the galaxy they were about to enter. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was a jungle, filled with predators who preyed upon the weak. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak either served or died. There was no united federation of planets waiting to welcome humanity with open arms. There were only empires and their victims. So humanity had made a decision. They would pretend to be weak. They would hide their true capabilities behind a mask of harmlessness. And while the galaxy ignored them, they would build the most powerful military force in existence. The Forge was the heart of that effort. Using technology stolen from 100 different sources and improved by human ingenuity, it could produce a fully operational warship in less than 3 days. It had been running continuously for 187 years. "What about the special projects?" Patricia asked. Kevin's expression flickered with something between pride and unease. "Project Lazarus is fully operational. We can now resurrect any ship destroyed in combat within 6 hours, as long as the core survives." Patricia remembered the first time she had learned about Lazarus. Human ships were not just machines. They were grown around a central core that contained backups of every system, every program, every piece of data. Destroy the hull, and a new one would simply be built around the surviving core. It made human vessels effectively immortal. Project Prometheus is at 94% completion, Kevin continued. Estimated time to full deployment is 12 days. Prometheus was their primary offensive weapon, a network of platforms scattered throughout human space, each one capable of projecting devastating energy beams across distances of several light-years. When activated, Prometheus could strike any point in the galaxy almost instantly. No fleet could approach Earth without passing through its killing zone. And Project Nightmare is requesting final authorization. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about Nightmare, though no one spoke of it willingly. It was humanity's insurance policy, a weapon so terrible that its mere existence violated every principle humanity claimed to hold dear. "What is Nightmare's current status?" Patricia asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Ready for deployment on your command, Admiral. 144 units are positioned throughout Zorath space. They are currently undetectable and will remain so until activation." Patricia closed her eyes. 144 units. Each one was a machine no larger than a football, drifting silently through space. Each one contained enough self-replicating nanobots to consume an entire planet down to its core. Once activated, they would spread like a virus, converting all matter they touched into more of themselves. There was no cure. If Patricia gave the order, the entire Zorath Empire would simply cease to exist within a matter of weeks. Every planet, every ship, every living being would be reduced to gray dust. "Hold Nightmare in reserve," she said finally. "We will not need it unless everything else fails." Kevin nodded, relief visible on his face. "Understood, Admiral." Patricia opened her eyes and turned to face her bridge crew. These men and women were the best humanity had to offer. They had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. Now that it was here, She saw no fear in their eyes, only determination. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "In 30 days, the Zorath invasion fleet will arrive in our system. They expect to find a weak and helpless species waiting for them. They expect easy prey." She allowed herself a small, cold smile. "They are wrong." She pulled up a holographic display, showing the tactical situation. The Zorath had committed 15,000 ships to their invasion force. By galactic standards, it was an overwhelming armada. By human standards, it was barely a challenge. "Our fleet outnumbers them nearly 3 to 1. Our weapons are superior. Our ships are faster, stronger, and effectively immortal. We have studied their tactics for 200 years and developed countermeasures for everything they can throw at us." She paused. "But I want to make something absolutely clear. Our goal is not just to defeat this invasion. Our goal is to ensure that no species ever threatens humanity again." She zoomed out the display to show the entire Zorath Empire, spanning dozens of star systems. "While the enemy fleet dies here, our secondary forces will strike at every military installation in their territory simultaneously. We will destroy their shipyards, their weapons factories, their command centers. We will liberate every species they have enslaved. And when we are finished, the Zorath Empire will exist only in history books." Lieutenant Kevin Morris spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, some of those slave species may not welcome us. The Zorath have controlled them for centuries. They might see us as just another conqueror." "Then we will prove them wrong," Patricia replied firmly. "We are not fighting this war to build an empire. We are fighting it to ensure that no one else can build one either." She turned back to the main display. "Signal all fleet commanders. We have 30 days to prepare. Use them well." Across the vast distance of space, in the great shipyards of the Zorath homeworld, High Commander Vexthar was receiving reports that made no sense. Human settlements at the edge of their territory had begun evacuating, not in panic, not in chaos, but with calm efficiency. Ships departed on precise schedules. Populations relocated according to obvious plans. It was as if humanity had been preparing for this evacuation for years. Even more disturbing, human communication channels had gone completely silent. Where before they had broadcast openly on all frequencies, now there was nothing but static. The humans had become ghosts. Vexthar stared at the reports and felt something he had never experienced before in his long career of conquest. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was fear. The Zorath invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly on schedule. 15,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their weapons already charging, their crews eager for battle. High Commander Vexthar stood at the center of his flagship's command sphere, all 4 of his eyes fixed on the blue and green world that hung in the distance. Earth, the human homeworld. In a few hours, it would be nothing but ash and memory. "Begin broadcasting the surrender ultimatum," Vexthar ordered. "Inform the humans that they have 1 rotation to lay down their arms and submit to Zorath rule. If they refuse, we will begin orbital bombardment." "Yes, Commander." The communications officer began transmitting on all frequencies. Vexthar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Despite his earlier fears, everything was proceeding according to plan. The human evacuation had obviously been a sign of panic. Their communication silence was merely the quiet of a defeated species, waiting for the end. The holographic display of their hidden fleet had surely been a bluff, a desperate attempt to frighten the Zorath into backing down. No primitive species could truly challenge the might of the Empire. "Commander." The sensor officer's voice cut through his thoughts. There was something wrong with that voice. It sounded strained. "We are detecting anomalies." "Explain." "Ships are emerging from the asteroid field. Many ships." Vexthar turned to the tactical display. For a moment, he could not understand what he was seeing. The empty space around the asteroids was filling with contacts. Not gradually, all at once, as if a curtain had been pulled back to reveal what had been hiding behind it. "How many?" he demanded. "Still counting, Commander. 20,000, 30,000, 40. Commander, they outnumber us 3-1, and more are still appearing." Vexthar stared at the display in disbelief. The human ships were black against the darkness of space, visible only by their running lights and the energy signatures of their weapons. They were smaller than Zorath vessels, but there were so many of them. They filled the void like a swarm of angry insects. The communication array crackled. Ambassador Daniel Porter's face appeared on the main screen, that same mild smile on his lips. He was still holding his newspaper. "Good morning, Commander. I trust you had a pleasant journey?" He gestured at something off-screen. "As you can see, we have prepared a small welcoming party. I hope it meets your expectations." "This is impossible," Vexthar snarled. "No species could build such a fleet in secret. Our intelligence would have detected it." "Your intelligence detected exactly what we wanted it to detect." Daniel's smile widened slightly. "You see, Commander, humanity has been preparing for this day since we first learned of your empire's existence. We knew eventually someone would come for us. We knew we would need to be ready." "Numbers mean nothing," Vexthar roared, his confidence returning. "Our warriors have conquered species far more numerous than yours. Our technology is superior. Please allow me to interrupt," Daniel said politely. "Your shields operate on a rotating frequency modulation, correct? We cracked that encryption 142 years ago. Your primary weapons use concentrated plasma streams. We developed ablative hull plating that renders them largely ineffective about a century ago. Your tactical doctrine relies on tight formations and overwhelming firepower. We designed our ships specifically to exploit the weaknesses of that approach." The color drained from Vexthar's face. His mandibles clicked nervously. "You cannot know all of that." "We know everything, Commander. We have been watching and learning for 200 years. Daniel's expression shifted slightly, the warmth fading from his eyes. "Admiral Cole will handle the military aspects of our conversation from here. But before I hand things over, I wanted to give you one final opportunity to reconsider your position." "You dare offer terms to me?" "I dare offer you survival." For the first time, Daniel's voice carried an edge. "Order your fleet to stand down. Return to your space. Agree to peace negotiations. If you do this, most of your people will live." He paused. "If you refuse, none of them will." Vexthar drew himself up to his full height. His warrior's pride burned away the fear that had begun to creep into his hearts. He was High Commander of the Zorath Empire. He would not surrender to a species that had hidden in the shadows like cowards. "All ships," he bellowed into the fleet-wide channel. "Attack formation. We will crush these pretenders and—" The first wave of human missiles struck before he could finish the sentence. Admiral Patricia Cole watched from the bridge of the USS Horizon as her fleet tore into the Zorath formation. The enemy ships were tough, she had to admit. Their shields held longer than expected, and their return fire was intense. But the humans had every advantage that mattered. "Target their command vessels first," she ordered calmly. "Eliminate their ability to coordinate." "Already in progress, Admiral," Lieutenant Kevin Morris reported. "We are detecting massive communication disruption in their fleet. They are losing coordination." The tactical display showed the battle unfolding in real time. Human ships darted through the Zorath formation like wolves among sheep, striking at weak points and withdrawing before the enemy could respond. When Zorath weapons did find their mark, the human vessels simply shrugged off the damage or fell back for rapid repairs. Meanwhile, the Zorath ships were dying by the hundreds. Their plasma cannons splashed harmlessly against human armor. Their missiles were shot down by automated defense systems. Their fighters were swept from space by weapons they did not even have names for. "Admiral," Kevin said quietly, "the enemy flagship is attempting to retreat. Should we pursue?" Patricia considered for a moment. Letting Vexstar escape would send a message to the rest of his empire. They would learn what happened here. They would understand what they were facing. "No," she decided. "Let him run. Let him tell his emperor what he witnessed today." She smiled coldly. "It will make the next phase easier." On the Zorath flagship, High Commander Vexstar screamed orders at his surviving officers as his vessel limped toward the hyperspace threshold. All around him, his fleet was being annihilated. Ships that had conquered worlds were breaking apart under human fire. Warriors who had never known defeat were dying by the thousands. "Get us out of here," he shrieked. "All ships, full retreat, emergency jump." Less than 2,000 Zorath vessels managed to escape into hyperspace. The rest were left behind as burning wreckage, drifting through the void near the world they had come to conquer. Daniel Porter watched the remnants of the invasion fleet disappear from his display. He was back in his office on Earth now, the newspaper finally set aside. "Phase 1 complete," he murmured to himself. "Now the real work begins." Claire Webb entered the room with a tablet full of reports. "Sir, all 12 of our secondary fleets have departed for Zorath space. They will arrive at their targets within the week." Daniel nodded slowly. The Zorath had committed a significant portion of their military to this invasion. With those forces destroyed, their empire was vulnerable. Human fleets were already moving to strike at shipyards, weapons factories, and command centers throughout Zorath territory. But Daniel was thinking beyond the military campaign. He was thinking about what would come after. "Claire, what is the current count of species enslaved by the Zorath?" 14 confirmed, sir. Possibly more that we have not identified yet. 14 civilizations waiting to be freed. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Make sure our ground forces understand their orders. We are not there to conquer. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity is different from the empires that came before." Claire hesitated. "Sir, do you think they will believe us, after what we just did?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I do not know, but we have to try. Otherwise, we are just another monster." He picked up the newspaper again, but did not open it. He simply held it, remembering a simpler time when humanity's greatest challenges were crossword puzzles and morning coffee. Those days were gone forever now. 3 days after the Battle of Saul, the remnants of the Zorath invasion fleet were still running. Of the 15,000 ships that had come to destroy humanity, fewer than 2,000 remained operational. They fled through space like wounded animals, their engines burning at maximum power as they tried desperately to reach the safety of their home territory. Admiral Patricia Cole pursued them without mercy. Her fleet moved through the void like a great pack of predators, patient and methodical. There was no rush. The Zorath ships were slower than their human pursuers, their hyperspace drives damaged by the battle. They could not escape. They could only delay the inevitable. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kevin Morris reported from his station. "We have intercepted communications from the enemy fleet. They are calling for reinforcements." "Response from their command?" Kevin shook his head. "None, Admiral. Our secondary fleets have already reached Zorath space. Their communication relays are being systematically destroyed. The survivors have no idea what is waiting for them when they get home." Patricia allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. The plan was unfolding exactly as designed. While the Zorath had been focused on Earth, human forces had struck at targets throughout their empire. Shipyards were burning, weapons factories were in ruins. The great military machine that had terrorized the galaxy for 3,000 years was being dismantled piece by piece. But that was not enough for Patricia. She wanted the survivors of this fleet to witness the destruction of their empire firsthand. She wanted them to carry that knowledge back to their homeworld. She wanted them to understand exactly what humanity was capable of. On board the crippled Zorath flagship, High Commander Vexthar lay in the medical bay with half his body wrapped in bandages. 3 of his 4 eyes had been blinded by shrapnel during the battle. His natural armor was cracked in dozens of places. The ship's doctors had done what they could, but their supplies were running low, and there were thousands of wounded soldiers competing for attention. Around him, his surviving officers argued in hushed, panicked tones. "We must contact the homeworld," one insisted. "Call for reinforcements. The Emperor will send the reserve fleets." "What reserve fleets?" another hissed back. "We were the reserve fleets. The Emperor committed everything to this campaign. Everything." Vexthar listened to them bicker and felt something strange growing in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as despair. He had served the Empire for over 100 years. He had led conquests on a dozen worlds. He had never even considered the possibility of defeat. Now, defeat was all he could see. The door to the medical bay slid open, and a young communications officer stumbled in. His uniform was torn, and there was dried blood on his face, but his eyes were wide with terror. "Commander," he gasped, "we have intercepted human transmissions. They are not just pursuing us, they are attacking our colonies, all of them, simultaneously." Vexthar's remaining eye focused with difficulty. "That is impossible. They cannot know the locations of our installations." "They know everything, Commander." The officer's voice dropped to a whisper. "They were just waiting for us to give them a reason to attack." On a small agricultural moon deep in Zorath territory, a young human soldier named Marcus Bell crouched behind the ruins of a guard tower and watched the last of the enemy defenders surrender. The assault had been quick and efficient. Human dropships had descended from orbit without warning, deploying soldiers equipped with weapons the Zorath had never encountered. The garrison had fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within 2 hours, the entire installation was under human control. Now came the harder part. Marcus stood up and walked toward the group of prisoners being guarded by his squadmates. Beyond them, he could see the local population beginning to emerge from their hiding places. They were strange creatures, insectoid in appearance, with multiple limbs and large compound eyes. Their antennae twitched nervously as they watched the human soldiers. "Easy," Marcus said softly, lowering his weapon to show he meant no harm. "We are not here to hurt you." The creatures stared at him without comprehension. They had been slaves of the Zorath for over 500 years. They had forgotten what freedom looked like. The only change they had ever known was from one master to another. An older creature, larger than the rest, crept forward cautiously. Around its neck hung a device that Marcus recognized as a translation unit. It spoke in hesitant, badly accented English. You are the humans, the weak ones, the ones who hide?" Marcus could not help but smile. "We were never weak. We just did not want to become what we are capable of being." The creature studied him with its compound eyes. "What do you want from us? We have nothing of value. Our world produces only food for our masters. We do not want anything from you." Marcus reached into his pack and pulled out a small device. "We are here to give you something. This is a communication unit. It connects to a network of satellites we are deploying in orbit. From now on, you can speak directly to your people on other worlds. You can coordinate. You can organize." The creature took the device with trembling limbs. "I do not understand. Why would you help us?" "Because everyone deserves to be free." Marcus looked up at the sky, where the distant flashes of orbital combat could still be seen. "The Zorath took that freedom from you. We are here to give it back. Across the dying empire, similar scenes were playing out on 100 different worlds. Human soldiers arrived not as conquerors, but as liberators. They destroyed military installations, but protected civilians. They distributed food and medical supplies to populations that had been starved for centuries. They asked for nothing in return, except a promise. Do not become what was done to you. Do not seek revenge. Build something better. Not everyone believed them at first. Centuries of oppression had taught these species to trust no one, especially not powerful newcomers with advanced weapons. But as days turned into weeks, and the humans showed no signs of establishing their own rule, attitudes began to shift. Admiral Patricia Cole received regular reports on the liberation efforts. She read them carefully, noting both the successes and the problems. Some species welcomed the humans with open arms. Others remained suspicious and hostile. A few had been so thoroughly broken by Zorath rule that they did not know how to function without masters. "We cannot save everyone," she said quietly to Kevin Morris one evening. "Some of these civilizations will take generations to recover, if they ever do." "Is that not a reason to stay?" Kevin asked. "To help guide them?" Patricia shook her head firmly. "That is exactly what we must not do. The moment we start telling them how to live, we become the Zorath with better manners." She pulled up a star chart showing the dozens of worlds now under human protection. "We will defend them from external threats. We will provide humanitarian aid. But their societies, their governments, their futures, those belong to them. And if they make bad choices, if some of them turn violent, then we will deal with those situations as they arise." Patricia's expression hardened. "But we will not preemptively control them out of fear of what they might become. That is not freedom. That is just a prettier cage." The pursuit of the Zorath survivors continued for another week, before they finally reached their home system. What they found there shattered whatever hope they had left. The great shipyards of the Zorath homeworld, which had produced warships for 3,000 years, were burning. The orbital defense platforms had been reduced to debris. The sky above the capital city was filled with human vessels, maintaining a perfect blockade that nothing could penetrate. High Commander Vexthar looked upon the ruins of his civilization and wept. The war was not over yet, but he knew in his heart that it was already lost. 1 year had passed since the Zorath Empire declared war on humanity. In that time, everything had changed. Ambassador Daniel Porter walked slowly through the ruins of the Zorath Imperial Palace on their homeworld. The massive crystal spires that had once reached toward the clouds now lay shattered across the ground. The great throne room, where 17 conquered civilizations had knelt in submission over 3,000 years, was open to the sky. Rain fell through the gaps in the broken ceiling, forming small pools on the cracked floor. Behind Daniel walked a group of aliens representing a dozen different species. They were former subjects of the Zorath Empire, peoples who had lived as slaves for centuries. Now they walked freely through the palace of their former masters, still struggling to believe that this was real. Among them was the old insectoid creature from the agricultural moon, the one who had first questioned Marcus Bell about humanity's intentions. In the past year, it had emerged as a leader among the liberated species, someone who could speak for those who had been voiceless for so long. Its name, translated roughly into English, meant something like Voice of the Forgotten. "You have done what none of us believed possible," Voice of the Forgotten said, its translation device giving the words a tone of wonder. "You have broken the Zorath. The galaxy will remember this day forever." Daniel stopped at the edge of a massive crater. It was all that remained of the Imperial Command Center, the heart of Zorath military power. Human weapons had turned it to dust in a matter of seconds. "We did not want this," Daniel said quietly. Humanity spent 200 years hoping we would never have to use what we built. We knew what it would mean. We knew what it would cost. He turned to face the gathered delegates. Not just the lives lost, though those weigh heavily on us, but what it would do to us as a species. What it would make us become. The voice of the Forgotten tilted its head in confusion. You are victorious. You are powerful beyond anything this galaxy has ever seen. Why do you speak as if this is a burden? Because power without wisdom is just destruction with extra steps. Daniel looked out over the ruins. We built weapons that could end civilizations. We trained soldiers who could conquer worlds. We became exactly the kind of species we always feared meeting in the stars. He paused. The only difference between us and the Zorath is that we hate what we have become. Admiral Patricia Cole approached from nearby. Her dress uniform was crisp and clean, despite the dust that swirled around them. In the past year, her fleet had achieved the most complete military victory in recorded galactic history. The Zorath Navy had been reduced to a handful of patrol ships. Their army had been disarmed and scattered. Their government had collapsed entirely. The last Zorath military installation surrendered this morning, she reported. As of today, their empire no longer exists in any meaningful form. Daniel nodded slowly. And the casualty count? Patricia consulted her tablet. Human forces suffered approximately 400 deaths and 12,000 wounded throughout the entire campaign. Zorath military casualties are estimated at 62 million dead. She paused. Civilian casualties on Zorath worlds were minimal. Our forces followed protocols carefully. 62 million. Daniel let that number sink in. 62 million lives ended because one species had decided another species was worth destroying. He wondered if the Zorath Emperor, wherever he was hiding now, understood the price of his arrogance. So what happens now? Patricia asked. The Zorath are broken, but there are other empires out there, other species that might see us as a threat. Do we go back to hiding? Daniel shook his head. No, we can never unmake what we have done. We can never unsee what we have learned about this galaxy. He addressed the gathered delegates directly. But we can choose what comes next. Humanity did not fight this war for conquest or glory. We fought it because someone had to stand up and say, enough. No more empires, no more slaves, no more prey. He pulled out a document. It was actual paper, printed with ink, an old-fashioned thing in an age of digital everything. Daniel believed some things were important enough to put on paper. The Terran Compact, he said, holding it up for all to see. A mutual defense alliance, open to any species that commits to certain principles. No wars of conquest, no slavery, no genocide, no subjugation of weaker peoples. He paused. In return, you receive the full protection of Earth's military capabilities. Anyone who threatens you, threatens us. Anyone who attacks you, attacks us. Voice of the Forgotten studied the document with its compound eyes. And humanity? What will you become? The new emperors? Guardians, Daniel said firmly. Not rulers. The galaxy does not need another empire. It needs protectors who are strong enough to defend the weak, but wise enough not to become the thing they fought against. How can we trust that you will not change? Another delegate asked. The Zorath were not always conquerors. Once they were explorers, scientists, artists. Power corrupted them over time. Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. You cannot trust us based on promises. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. He gestured toward Patricia. Admiral Cole will remain in command of our defensive forces. They will patrol the borders of compact space and respond to any threats. But they will answer to a council made up of representatives from every member species, not to Earth alone. Patricia nodded in agreement. Humanity will have no special authority in the compact. We will be one voice among many. Our military strength exists to protect, not to rule. And if humanity itself becomes corrupt, if future generations forget the lessons you have learned, voice of the forgotten pressed, if future generations forget the lessons you have learned, Daniel smiled sadly. Then the other species of the compact will have to stand together and stop us. That is the whole point of what we are building here. No single species should ever have unchecked power. Not even us. Especially not us. The rain continued to fall through the broken ceiling of the throne room. The delegates murmured among themselves, discussing what they had heard. After several minutes, Voice of the Forgotten stepped forward. "My people will sign your compact," it said. "We have been slaves for 500 years. We have forgotten what it means to be free. Perhaps you can help us remember." One by one, the other delegates came forward as well. Some were eager, some were hesitant. All of them were taking a leap of faith, trusting that humanity meant what it said. Claire Webb approached Daniel with her tablet. "Sir, the initial signatories are confirmed, and there has been a development. 3 more species have requested admission to the compact. They are not former Zorath subjects. They heard about what we are building and want to be part of it." Daniel felt something warm stir in his chest. Perhaps humanity's greatest weapon was not their ships or their soldiers. Perhaps it was something simpler. Perhaps it was hope. "Process their applications," he said, "and Claire, start planning for a proper headquarters. We cannot keep running an interstellar alliance out of conference rooms." As the day wore on, the delegates departed one by one, returning to their ships and their worlds, with news of what had been agreed. Eventually, only Daniel, Patricia, and Claire remained in the ruins. Daniel walked to the edge of the throne room and looked out over the Zorath capital. Reconstruction crews were already at work in the distance, clearing rubble and preparing to build something new. The Zorath people would survive. They would rebuild, and perhaps in time, they would become something better than they had been. "We did not want to be warriors," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. "But if the galaxy insists on having monsters, then it is better to have monsters who remember what it is like to be something else." Patricia joined him at the edge. "Do you think we can really do this? Build something lasting? Keep ourselves from becoming what we destroyed?" "I do not know," Daniel admitted. "Every empire in history started with good intentions. Power corrupts. We learned that lesson on Earth long before we ever reached the stars." He turned to face her. "But we have to try. The alternative is to become exactly what we hate. And I would rather fail trying to be better than succeed at being terrible." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded newspaper he had carried into the Dominion Council a year ago. It was worn and faded now, wrinkled from being carried through a war. He looked at it for a long moment, remembering the man he had been before all of this began. Then he let it go. The wind caught it and carried it away, tumbling over the ruins until it disappeared from sight. "Come on," Daniel said, straightening his jacket. "We have a lot of work to do." He walked away through the ruins of the old order, and behind him, the first seeds of something new began to take root in the ashes. Somewhere out among the stars, humanity was finally becoming what it was always meant to be. Not conquerors, not monsters, just guardians, standing watch over a galaxy that was slowly learning it did not have to be afraid anymore. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.